bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through crying, I'm through waiting, I'm through hoping against all hope. I'm through longing for something gone that'll never return. I think I finally learned, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. I'm through grieving, I'm through dreaming that the life I had is ever coming back. No more wishing on someone else's star that'll never be mine. I think it's time to bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. Yeah, not surviving many times before, broken hearts and slamming doors. I'll be alright, yes I will once more, just as I did back then. I'm gonna rise again, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new, so bring it on. Everything new, everything different, everything true. I am ready for my next thing to do. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new. Oh, I know it's gonna be everything new.
Join me in prayer. There is but one God, one life, and I'm living that God's life right here and right now. United in spirit, which moves, breathes, and has its being in me, it is ever present with every person, place, thing, situation, or circumstance. And I know this to be true as I look about and see that there is no one quite like me. And it doesn't make me so special, it simply reminds me that everything and everyone, whether it be in nature expressing itself so beautifully, a musician playing a song or singing it, that there is no one quite like me, quite like you, in the we-ness of us all. I'm grateful this day to be surrounded in this community, New Dawn, Whether I'm here seated in a seat, taking a walk in nature, sitting on my sofa with a cup of coffee, whether I am present in a mosque, a temple, a teepee, matters not. It is in this moment that we come together communing, when we know that there is strength, when spirit is shared. The light within me, the light within you shines forevermore. It's why we are here. And this day we are blessed to have Christine Monks with us, a licensed practitioner in the senior year of that ministerial school. Blessings abound as Christine comes to share the words that move the spirit, that come from within, to be shared for the people who need to hear it, whether here or later next week. This community, sewn together with all the hands that put it together, the AV team, the music, the musicians, the singer, the electronics, the people who make sure that the seats are arranged, those giving meditation, my fellow practitioners, the hospitality. It does indeed take many hands. And so together we come and join in this very special time and moment where we drop from our brains, our human minds, into our heart. I'm grateful to be able to say these words and honored, knowing that they have been spoken into the divine, where they are met, heard, and it is pressed down for our best and our highest, returning right here and now. I can release and let go, knowing all is well, because God has got this, and it's always better than my imagination, always for the best and highest. And together we say, and so it is. For the words of inspiration this day in reference to getting comfortable with discomfort, our topic this day, Maritza Bosvert. Familiarity calms us. The desire to cling to routine is instinct, a need to establish some control in our lives in order to handle the uncomfortable. Unfamiliar, defenses go up, and we experience fear, that wariness that keeps us from change and halts our ability to evolve. What is important is how we relate to our discomfort. And from Carl Jung, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious. And from our founder, the honored Dr. Ernest Holmes, there is a power at the center of your being, so wonderful, it staggers the imagination. Life is in you, in everything and everyone. To learn to use this power is the greatest thing in life. Life has already created and provided all your happiness, well-being, and success. It is up to you to make it a reality in all of your affairs. Today is your heart's desire through imagination, not will.
Last week, Reverend Jen talked about paradox and living with paradox and embracing a paradox mindset. And she invited everyone to spend this past week, with that paradox mindset. So since Reverend Jen always assigns homework, I hope you all did your homework. I won't be collecting it at the end of the talk today, but just know that it's important that you have done it. But she also encouraged everybody to be playful about this. And so again, I think that's part of what we sometimes miss in life, is just being playful with this. Because at the end of the day, life is supposed to be fun, right? It's not supposed to be drudgery. It's not supposed to be awful. So I'm going to continue that theme this week. But my talk is about getting comfortable with discomfort, as I think Russell mentioned. And that seems like its own little paradoxical statement, doesn't it? I mean, how can we get comfortable with being discomfort? I mean, if you get comfortable with discomfort, then it's probably not discomfortable anymore, right? So it's probably, it's like that's the paradox. But as I was preparing this talk, I thought, well, why would we even want to get comfortable with discomfort? What does that give to us? And I think it gives us an invitation to grow. Because none of us ever grow if we always stay firmly in our comfort zone, right? If all we do is stay exactly where we are and do exactly everything we've ever known, well, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got, right? So if you like it, great, but most of us want to expand. We want to become more than we were. Ernest Holmes, our founder, was very clear that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Yet we often get caught up in seeing this from only one perspective, which allows us to miss that duality of our experience here. If we're so focused on oneness, and that everything is God, and that everything is good, and the big picture, I think we miss the opportunity to go out and support someone in need. And if we see someone who's being oppressed by a system of oppression, or someone who is being treated unkindly or disrespectfully, if all we're doing is saying it's all good because it's all God, which is true, it is, but we're missing that humanity part of this experience. Because life is not a spectator sport. We're expected to get involved. We're expected to step up and step into it. But on the other hand, if we get so caught up in the suffering and challenges of everyday life that we forget the divine part of us and the divine part of all the people that we're having our challenges with, then we miss out on that part too, don't we? So for us, I think science of mind and spirit asks us to embrace this duality, this polarity that we live in of divinity and humanity, and find a third way to embrace that, where we embrace both aspects of it. Earlier this week, I was stressing out about this talk. I have a lot on my plate right now. I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. And most of the time when I'm asked to speak, I spend a lot of time working out every exact word that I'm going to say. And I think that's because I'm uncomfortable with it. And my way of dealing with this discomfort is to over-prepare and overthink it. And so I decided to try it a different way this time. I decided not to do that. I decided that I have guidance. I am the divine manifesting in physical form, as each and every one of you are. And I just figured this would work out. And Reverend Jen said, have fun with this. And I thought, well, that's a really novel idea, isn't it? Let's just have fun with this. So that's what I'm doing. I'm having fun with it. I think many of you know that I was published in the Science of Mind magazine in September. And And while I'm really honored that this happened, that article that I wrote was never intended to be published. That was not my point when I wrote it. I wrote it for an audience of one person, Reverend Josh Reeves of Mile High Church, because I wrote it as a ministerial final paper for one of my classes. And the class was called Contemporary Applications of Science of Mind, and we were exploring what our ministries would be about and whether science of mind and spirit was still relevant in today's world. When I turned the paper in, he was very encouraging, and he said, I think this is highly publishable. He said, I think you should submit it to Holly Sharp and the Science of Mind magazine. So I did. And he was right. They liked it a lot. And in fact, they put it in like virtually immediately. So it was very humbling, and it was really uncomfortable. If you haven't read it, you should, not just because I wrote it, but because it talks about things that are important to talk about that oftentimes we don't. But it's a very personal paper. It's very revealing. And I'll share just the first 2 sentences of it to give you an idea. It's called, As a Minister, I Must Speak My Truth. As a lifelong Republican and transgender woman, I face immense challenges in the current political environment. I no longer know my tribe, and they seemingly no longer wish to know me. I seldom share both of these aspects about myself, and I would typically not share them at the same time with the same group of people. I suspect that some of you know that I'm a transgender woman, but it wasn't something I shared last year when I did my ministerial internship here, because it really wasn't relevant to who I am and what I was doing. I certainly never told any of you about my political affiliation. Because outing myself carries risks. It really does. Because we live in a world that's dominated by polarities. Often we stand on one side of the polarity, the other. Our language, our way of moving about, our way of asking questions of one another, it all has to do with reinforcing the polarity. Oh, you're one of those people. Whatever that means. But it doesn't mean we are one, does it? It means there's us and them. And all of our language is around this. Are you a morning person or are you a night owl? Are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Do you like cats? Or are you a dog person? Right? Polarities, either or. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you male or female? Straight or gay? Cisgender or transgender? All of these things we do are meant to categorize us and put us in a box. But it doesn't help us see that we are one and we are each manifesting from that space. It's interesting because the inspiration for writing that paper that ultimately turned into the article came from some research I was doing for another ministerial class called Minister as Teacher. And I was researching the anti-transgender laws that are exploding across the countries in states with Republican-controlled legislatures. And it's personally very distressing to me. that research I did eventually became the class I'm teaching here at New Dawn called Increase Your Queer Quotient, which some of you in this room are attending. And the class invites people who don't know a lot about the queer or the LGBTQ community to come and learn things about transgender, gender diverse, non-binary individuals, learn some of the vernacular, some of the terminology, so that you can be welcoming or supportive or be less uncomfortable, right? Get rid of some of your discomfort around it. Because what we don't understand or what we don't know tends to make us feel uncomfortable. It's pretty interesting for somebody who didn't know what she was going to say about this topic earlier this week, that somehow Spirit came up with all these really great examples for me of what I could talk about, right? I just had to quiet my mind and allow it to come to me. Because I live with discomfort a lot in my life. And sometimes I just don't even think about the fact that that's the petri dish that I live in, if you will. So do you see how we often see this through a lens of either or? Our entire society seems based on picking a side, right? Even when you don't fit on a single side. I don't fit on a single side, and I suspect you don't either. But you have to pick a team. You have to pick a side because everybody wants to know who you are, because then they can decide whether they're for you or against you or what they are. We are not either or. We are both and. I'm going to say that again. We are not either or, we are both and. Yet once we've chosen our side, whether it's a preference, a belief system, a way of thinking, a call to action, then we only begin to see the benefits of that side, of our side, and we see the defects of the other side. This process of singling out a minority of the population due to their differences, whether it be race, religion, sexual orientation, gender expression, is called othering. It focuses on the difference between marginalized people or oppressed people and us, rather than focusing on our shared humanity. Sean Ginwright wrote a book called The Four Pivots, and he described this process of othering. And here's what he said about it. I explained to the group the process of othering, assigning negative attributes to groups unlike your own, and belonging, the practice of cultivating the capacity to see the humanity in groups unlike our own, and its consequences for our collective effort for social change. I described that our real work as leaders, if we really want to create a healing-centered world, is to recognize how the process of othering leads to separation and ultimately dehumanization. I explained that we all need to find some way to embrace the humanity among those groups that we find most unlike ourselves. And we can see this in every debate or worldview of our time right now. I'd like to talk about another point that I'm calling doubling down. When we force ourselves, or we are forced, into only one side of a polarity, we begin to experience the effects of overusing that polarity. It can be fairly easy to shift back and forth if you don't have much emotional investment in the polarity. So if you tell me you're a cat lover, but all of a sudden you found the cutest darn dog at the shelter, it's not real hard to say, well, I really like dogs too, right? I mean, there's not a lot of emotional investment in that. But it becomes more challenging if there's more to lose. When it comes to something we have invested a lot of our time and money and effort into, we seem reluctant to let it go. And additionally, if it becomes nearly impossible if we discover that something we identify with is no longer working for us. This can be seen in our politics and our views on immigration, abortion, spiritual beliefs, religion, cultural views. Other than opening to the vulnerability of modifying your opinion or being wrong, oftentimes what we do is we double down on the polarity. We want to be right so much that it doesn't matter if the overwhelming evidence is that there might be a better way to view this. We overly focus on the benefits of our side, even if we're no longer experiencing those benefits. And we push the other side away, amplifying its problems, even as we long for the benefits that we would achieve if we came back together. I have a story I want to share with you that I think illustrates this nicely. And it's from Brené Brown. It's from her book, The Atlas of the Heart. And I just want you to experience this story. It's not like 3 lines. It's a little bit longer than that. But it really touched me, and I think it reinforces what we're talking about. In 1954, the social psychologist Leon Festinger and 2 associates infiltrated a doomsday cult to find out what would happen when the leader's prophecy failed to be fulfilled. The leader had promised her followers that the world would end on December 21st, 1954, but that they would be picked up by a flying saucer and transported to safety at midnight on December 20th. Tavris and Aronson, which are the 2 individuals that infiltrated this group, explained that many of her followers quit their jobs, gave away their houses, and dispersed their savings in anticipation of the end. Who needs money in outer space, right? Others who were not quite so fully vested stayed at home in their homes and were just afraid. Festinger predicted, and this is the interesting piece of this, that the believers who had not made strong commitments to the prophecy would quietly lose their faith when the world did not come to an end. But those who had given away their possessions and waited with the other believers for the spaceship would double down on their belief in her mystical abilities. He predicted that even if the prophecy did not materialize, the followers who lost the most would demonstrate their increased commitment by doing whatever they could to get others to join them. She goes on to note at the time, this blew the doors off every existing theory about motivation and human behavior. It was unthinkable that people would double down once they were proven wrong. Well, by 4:45 a.m., when the spaceship was a no-show, their leader shared a new vision of the world. Because of their strong faith, they had been spared. As hypothesized by Festinger, the most invested members responded by calling the media with the great news. They became even more invested evangelists for the group. Now, luckily, the doomsday leader's prediction failed, but Festinger's prediction didn't. And he changed the way we think about human behavior. It's interesting, isn't it? I think fast forward to 2020, and we see things like that happening in political environments and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of things that go on where we see people doing that. Despite facts, they're reluctant to let go of things. Now, I'm not a blackjack player, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to double down if you have a losing hand, right? I mean, I don't think that's the way you're supposed to play that. And yet, as human beings, sometimes we become so attached to being right, we would rather be right than have things go well. And isn't that kind of interesting and sad in its own way, right? The third thing I want to kind of share is about a third way that we might approach this. Rather than forcing ourselves into a single side of a polarity, or swinging back and forth between two sides of a polarity, what if we found a third way that embraced both? This does require us to get vulnerable and look at what's no longer working for us or our belief system or any of those kinds of things. And we also have to see the benefits from the other viewpoint. We can't be so myopic that we only see our way of seeing things. It's challenging to change your beliefs, ideas, even your identity to find a middle ground or a new perspective. But it's so important. It's so important to not become rigid in our belief system. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, has something to say about this. He says, "And let us not forget the importance of keeping our minds in a state of good-natured flexibility. Yes, we must be flexible and tolerant as well as positive and affirmative." And if nothing else, it's fun to see a multicolored slinky, isn't it? I mean, doesn't that take you back, right? For example, most people would label themselves as either introvert or extrovert. Yet even the greatest of introverts needs time with people, whether it be out in a public or in a small group or just one-on-one with someone else. And even the most outgoing extrovert amongst us needs downtime where they come back and recharge their batteries. And then they appreciate the quiet time too. I think during COVID, we all learned that if we spend too much time isolated and alone, we lose social skills and we lose some of those things that served us so well with getting together. Sometimes we lose friends over things like that because we just can't stay connected anymore. And again, on the other side, if you identify as an extrovert, if you spend every single waking minute with other people and all that, you can feel exhausted. You can feel like you never had any time for self-care. This third way is a balance of time by ourselves and time with others, navigating and discovering what it is we need in each polarity to feel fulfilled and receive the benefits that life has to offer. Ideally, the introvert-extrovert would give us great friendships, a rich inner life, self-care, and health to support us. Brené Brown has this to say about it. "In these challenging moments of dissonance, we need to stay curious and resist choosing comfort over courage. It's brave to invite new information to the table, to sit with it and hear it out. Oh, let me say that again. It's brave to invite new information to the table, to sit with it and hear it out. It's also rare. So to kind of conclude this and end with some call to action, we live in a world of polarities, and we can get very comfortable in our preferred worldview or perspective. But as spiritual beings participating in a human experience, we should resist the temptation to double down on our position, especially when we see evidence of its shortcomings. We should open ourselves up to a new perspective. We can release that either or and embrace the both and if we choose to. As we continue to play with the paradoxes and polarities that come up in our lives, it's important that we hold our beliefs lightly rather than tightly. Even our ideas, our beliefs, even our identity as we assess what works and what doesn't work in our lives. And if we find things where we feel like we're just holding on for dear life with some belief, like our entire world would crumble if we examined that, that may be Spirit's invitation to open your heart and see whether that still serves you. We have big challenges right now in our world in terms of coming together. Certainly in this country of ours, in the United States, we see a lot of polarization between people along a lot of different lines. So we need to work collectively to find solutions. If we're really committed to building a world that works for everyone, which is something that our Centers for Spiritual Living believe and espouse, then we have to see that. We have to visualize that. Ernest Holmes always talks about creating a mental equivalent, that thought always precedes reality. So we need to be willing to create that mental equivalent of a world that works for all. And we need to be willing to do our part. I'd given a talk at another center for a while, and one of the things I came up with was, like, somebody should do something, right? Because how often do we say that? Somebody should do something about that. And then I realized I'm somebody. I could be that somebody who does something about it, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Our thoughts precede reality. That's how creation works. So let's take a minute and pray together. I know that the only presence here today is that of the divine. No matter what we call it, no matter how we think of it, that intelligence, that first source, is ever present. There is no place that God is not. It is in this room, it is in each and every one of us. It expresses itself in what we call our physical universe. And I know there are no problems that God does not have a solution for. And since each and every one of us is God manifesting, we have access to those solutions. There's nothing kept from us. There's nothing hidden. The only thing required is that we open ourselves and allow the guidance, allow the love. God says yes to everything. God never says no. God says yes to what we give our attention to. So it's so important that we give our attention to what we want, not what we don't want. That we embrace, not push against. So knowing that, I just know that each of us can be a positive agent for change. We can adopt that third way. we can get comfortable with our discomfort, knowing that that is our path to growth, that that is how we use the contrast of our daily world to create new solutions. I give thanks for this time together. I give thanks for this container we call New Dawn CSL, where we can come together with others and learn and grow and share community and connection. I release these words into the law knowing they are already manifest in God's mind. They are already so. I let them go. I let them be. And I invite you to join me as I close my prayer by saying, and so it is.
I've been dragging my feet again. Can't seem to get my mind on the right track. I've been a couple of months now, and I keep hoping I'll get that high back. Or do I wake up to the sun and see only dark? Child, let it slide. There's a little piece of heaven right before your eyes. Child, give it up. 'Cause if you keep on keeping it, you're gonna miss so much in this life. Don't you remember that clarity that you were promising you'd never forget? Where is that in your mind now? Has it been crowded out by your bitterness? Oh, and you can't make people stay. You can only change yourself. Oh, and the sooner you let go, the sooner you make room for something else. So, child, let it slide. There's a little piece of heaven right before your eyes. Child, give it up. 'Cause they keep on keeping it. You're gonna miss so much in this life. And I know it hurts. It's so much worse than you expected it to be. So look around. There's no one here. You're the only enemy. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, child, let it slide. There's a little piece of heaven right before your eyes. Oh, child, give it up. 'Cause if you keep on keeping it, you're gonna miss so much. If you keep on keeping it, you're gonna miss so much. If you keep on keeping it, you're gonna miss so much in this life.
Hello, I'm Reverend Jen Wild, Senior Minister for New Dawn Center for Spiritual Living. New Dawn Center is a global community, and we welcome all people, all paths, all ways of thinking, all philosophies. So know that you are welcome here, and thank you for joining our online community.